Hello everyone, it's Ren here. I hope you are doing well, my friends. Welcome to my room. Here today we're going to, remain focused on a discussion of type. But this discussion today will not be focused on the INFJ specifically. We're talking about type in general. This channel mainly focuses on INFJ, but I do like to discuss broader, issues regarding type theories and personality types. And hopefully you'll find this of interest. This might be a little bit more technical, a little bit more philosophical. We'll see. I haven't prepared notes. I just want to share some observations and I'll try to make them as accessible as possible. Okay. Now, before I move on, this video is not focused on INFJ, but if you are interested in INFJ and you haven't got my book, The Ecstatic Soul, consider getting it if you want an in-depth understanding of this most unique, peculiar type. It's available at the links in the description box for less than $10. Check all the reviews on Amazon and make your decision. You can also get my book, The Infinite Castle, which was released a year after in 2022, which is a novel. Rumor has it the main character is an INFJ. Support the channel. Also, if you get the book, less than $10, and if you get this very nice product, you will support the channel, which you can also support by joining my Patreon page. The link is below. Thank you so much to my supporters. Okay, so there is this continuous discomfort in the type community writ large with this idea that type can change, right? And it is no wonder, really, that there is a certain level of discomfort with this idea that type can change. Not so much because, and this is the interesting fact, it's not so much that the discomfort is linked to the issue being unresolved. That is to say, it's not been definitively decided whether your type can change. Although some people believe that that's the source of the discomfort. I do not personally believe that. I think that the much more, if you like, rational reason why there is this discomfort is rather that the question is confused. It's not been properly analyzed down to its smallest component parts. And once we get to analyze it to its smallest component parts, things become a lot less confusing. And as a result, they become also a lot less discomforting. Okay. So really, when we're asking, can your type change? Right, the underlying question that we're asking ourselves is type is type an objective fact about reality? Is type something that has independent objective existence? Or is it just a set of descriptions that help us make sense of ourselves as we cope with the world, socially, emotionally, intellectually, at work, professionally, so on and so forth? So if you like, it's ultimately a question of an opposition between what you could call essentialism, and this is where we get a little bit more technical, but you'll see it's not that technical. All that matters is really whether we can understand what we mean by these terms. So it is an opposition in the type community, not spoken of in this way most of the time, not consciously embraced in this way, between type essentialism and what we might describe as type anti-essentialism. If we didn't want to just describe the second category in opposition to the first, we could describe it as a type existentialism, which is something that I like to embrace for myself, but others might prefer to talk about a type instrumentalism, although I think this term comes with certain issues. But instrumentalism in the sense that, type and its accompanying descriptions would not capture something essential about yourself and about people, but rather constitute an instrument to better make sense of yourself and your surroundings in all possible scenarios and dimensions. Now, suppose that there is this opposition. There are people who believe that type is something that is real and has an essence, right? In which case, let us be clear about this. If type has an essence, then we all have a type, and that type cannot change. Okay, we have a type that is essentially our own. So either I'm an INFJ or I'm not an INFJ, but I can't be an INFJ or something else depending on the context. That's type essentialism. Type anti-essentialism, type existentialism, if you like, doesn't really have an opinion on the first question, because it will just say, well, it depends what the best description is. If the best description is INFJ in this system, well, you're INFJ in this system. If the best description is INFP in another system, or INTP in another system, then you are INTP in that other system, and that's what provides the best description. And you can say, okay, I work with this INFJ description in this system, and I work with this INTP description in that other system. In fact, as can happen in some really good systems, you can be an intuitive, in a Jungian system. So let's stick to INFJ. And it's frequent that you're a sensor in another system. So for example, in cognitive type, it's really not that uncommon. Cognitive type being an interesting model which aims at objective analysis of type on the basis of empirical evidence, visual cues, and so on. I've talked about this before. You can perfectly well be an INFJ in a Jungian system, and an ISTP in their system. In fact, we should specify that cognitive type does not use ISTP on purpose to distinguish itself from Jungian systems. So we'll talk about TISE, okay? And cognitive type has its own approach and has its own criteria, such as, for example, the absence of the notion of an inferior function. That's one of its distinguishing characteristics, but there's many more. You can be an INFJ in Jungian systems and an ENFJ in cognitive type. Or rather, again, following the precept I just mentioned, FENI, okay? Usually there is an overlap, at least across what's called quadrants. That is to say that if you're an INFJ in a Jungian system, you're likely to, if you're not, an INFJ or NIFE in another system, you're still likely to be someone who possesses the same functions. That is to say NIFETISE, but not necessarily in that order, which makes intuitive sense as well. In any case, for a type anti-essentialist or non-essentialist or existentialist, that's not a problem at all. Okay, fair enough. For for Jungian systems, Jungian personality types, and Myers-Briggs belongs to that family of systems. I'm an INFJ, and according to cognitive type or some other model, I'm an FENI. In case of myself and some of my viewers, I believe would be TISEs in cognitive type. For an anti-essentialist, really, that's not a source of much discomfort or unease, right? But it will be a source of unease for type essentialists, because type essentialists will say, nay, type has an essence. My type has an essence, and essence doesn't, it belongs to the very definition of something essential, of an essence, that it doesn't differ across various dimensions, across different vocabularies, languages, and models and theories. Okay, so if I have objectively and essentially a type, it should remain that type. All right, so you'll see now, I think hopefully you begin to understand that the discomfort is not at the level of does type change cross systems, but am I an essentialist by type, or am I an anti-essentialist by type? Being myself an anti-essentialist by type, I don't really feel the discomfort. Now, the interesting thing is, that is another really interesting phenomenon, is that it is not intellectually, but emotionally tempting, especially in the early stages of discovering your type, say according to Jungian systems, to be an essentialist. And it's important here to emphasize that it is emotionally tempting. That is to say that it comes before analytical and intellectual clarification, which really should happen sooner or later, because it makes the whole process more rational. Not to deny emotions, but it makes the whole process more rational and transparent. But initially there is this emotional proclivity toward essentialism. Why? It's quite simply because when you discover, say, that you're an INFJ, well, being an INFJ then matters a lot to you, and it's important to you that you are an INFJ in an essential sense. That is to say that the essentialism that you unconsciously espouse is in some sense a function of how much you care about having been ascribed this particular type. So there are a lot of people who are emotionally committed to essentialism, even though they haven't quite figured out if they are, in fact, rationally and intellectually essentialists or anti-essentialists. And there's even more complex and paradoxical cases of people who are emotionally, or either I should say intellectually committed to anti-essentialism, but emotionally so attached to their type as identified, say, in Jungian systems, that really they are still emotionally essentialists. And that creates a lot of discomfort and a lot of confusion. But once you break down the issue into its component parts, you start realizing that once you get to this rational, intellectual sort of distinction between are you an essentialist or are you an anti-essentialist, you start understanding where the issues come from. Now, of course, for the anti-essentialists, most of the trouble here goes away. So it's an attractive option. But that is not to say that if you're sincerely committed to essentialism, you've thought it through analytically and you're still committed, you still think essentialism is the way, that there's only one unique essential type, then you're still faced with that discomfort. It is true. And so in the next video, I propose to continue to use this analytical method to break down essentialism. Because in fact, once you kind of drill down into type essentialism, you start noticing that you can actually allow a lot of differences of type across systems to dwell with each other, cohabit. It doesn't seem possible, but in fact it is possible even within a commitment to essentialism. But this video has been running for a while, so I propose to continue this discussion on Saturday or Sunday. Okay? In the meantime, let me know what you thought about this video. Were you able to follow? Did it make sense? Do you have any inputs to share? Please do share them if that's the case. And I will see you at the weekend. Don't forget my Patreon, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.